Hey guys, Nick Espinoza, your chief security fanatic here, and it is Sunday, so we are doing breaches of the week, and there has been a ton this week as we start to wrap up the year here, and I'd like to thank the following people for sending me tips and all of that throughout the week. So Susan Brown, Michael Schenk, Chris Fellon, David Walker, and Odin O. All of you, thank you very much. And if I missed your tip or missed your name, please let me know. I'm glad to include it next week. Now, with that, let's start in Argentina, and we're going to the city of San Luis. Now, basically, malicious hackers attacked a data center in Argentina, which basically housed government files there. Now, this attack took place on November 25th, and by December 2nd, the data center had approximately recovered about 90% or so of the encrypted data by virtue of, I believe, paying the ransom, although that was not specified. Some basically 7.7 terabytes or 10 years worth of data was originally compromised as a result of this attack. Now, basically, the hackers were asking for Bitcoin, and various reports have suggested that they wanted anywhere from $37,000 to $370,000 US to basically unlock this. And since that data center is unlocking files, the assumption is that they paid. So that is your news from San Luis, Argentina. Moving on, let's talk about various U.S. state governments. An online company that we are not naming that basically allows users to obtain a copy of their birth and death certificates from U.S. state governments has exposed basically a massive cache of applications, including personal information. More than 752,000 applications for copies of birth certificate were found on an Amazon Web Services storage bucket. Now, the bucket wasn't protected with a password, basically allowing anybody who knew this website, which was apparently very easy to figure out, to basically able to go and take a look at this. So this information actually differs basically from state to state, because every state has their local laws here in the U.S. And all of these, though, each state performed the same task using this service, which was to allow their citizens of the state to apply to the state record-keeping authority to get basically information on this. So they basically were reviewing, the researchers that found this were reviewing things like applicant's name, date of birth, current home address, email address, phone number, and historical personal information, including past address, names of family members, and reason for the application, such as applying for a passport or research or all of that. So that is obviously a very serious issue for 750,000 Americans out there. Moving on, we're going to keep that in the United States, and we're heading to New Orleans, one of my favorite cities. Now, this city actually, New Orleans, declared a state of emergency and shut down most of its computers after detecting suspicious activity, including ransomware and a flurry of phishing emails. Most of the city agencies actually went back to pen and paper as they were basically sorting this out. Now, the mayor of New Orleans, LaToya Cantrell, said that there has basically been no ransom requests or evidence of employees being tricked into handing over login details, but they are not taking any they're not taking anything for granted right now. So I'm actually glad that the city of New Orleans was on it that quickly. Moving on, and this was actually my video yesterday, we're going to be talking about Facebook, because over 29,000 employees had their sensitive payroll information exposed after a payroll employee, his car was broken into, and several unencrypted hard drives were stolen that had this employee data. So we're talking about, names, intimate details, payroll histories, bonuses, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Facebook took almost a month to notify their employees, which kind of underscores that Facebook, whether you're an employee or not, really doesn't care about your privacy or security. Not to mention the fact, why on earth did a payroll employee have this sensitive information outside of an ecosystem? A company like Facebook is going to have massive redundancies in the cloud. So there would basically be no reason to copy out this data, historical or otherwise. Here, this opens up a ton of questions as to what that employee was doing. But if you work for Facebook, heads up, your payroll information might have been dumped. Moving on, we're going to be talking about Shaw Communications. They're out of Canada. Now, some Shaw customers received letters in the mail basically this past week saying that their customer information was breached about 6 months ago. Now, the breach happened on June 22nd of 2019 when a Shaw employee had their corporate laptop stolen. Now, in a letter to their affected customers, Shaw stated that the laptop contained, and I quote, a limited amount of customer information, including customer names, account numbers, lists of services they subscribe to at Shaw, and whether their accounts were active or closed. So, one, encrypt your laptops. 2, if you are a Shaw customer, heads up to you. Moving on, we're going to be talking about a company called Rooster Teeth Productions. Now, they have done shows and documentaries like RT Docs, Crunch Time, Red vs. Blue, Genlock, and Day 5. I don't think I've seen any of those, but if you have, you know who I'm talking about. Now, they just discovered on December 2nd that their online store was hacked earlier in that day. Now, basically, malicious script was injected into the store that would cause the shopper to be redirected to a fake payment page under the control of the hackers. So, just basically typical. So if you bought anything from Rooster Teeth Productions and you didn't get it, odds are you were compromised. Moving on, we're going to be talking about Love Bonito. Now, apparently this is out of Singapore and it's a women's fashion site. Their payment system got hit, and personal information, including first and last name, shipping address, dates of birth, email addresses, phone numbers, order details, billing addresses, payment type, and credit card information, including expiration dates and the last 4 digits of the credit card, were hit. So if you shop at Love Bonito out of Singapore, heads up to you. Moving on, this is an update on Banner Health in the state of Arizona. They have reached a settlement by virtue of a HIPAA breach that basically was a class action suit on behalf of the 3.7 million patients impacted by their 2016 data breach, and they have agreed to pay $6 million as a settlement. So if you basically were belonging to Banner Health in 2016 or before, you may be entitled to money, probably $5. That's how these things go. Moving on, Electra Utilities out of Hamilton, Canada. There was a potential leak of information through Electra Utilities on citizens of Hamilton, which handle the water billing for the city. So customer names, addresses, and roll numbers, whatever that is, from their water bills were affected. So if you are in Hamilton, Canada, heads up, you might have been hit. Moving on, we're going to stay with utilities. In this case, water. We are talking about the Southern California Water District. Unauthorized access of a server used to process payments for San Bernardino, California water utility may have exposed customer billing information. This is actually part of the Click2Gov data breach, which apparently is continuing to go on and on and on and on. Waco, Texas also declared Click2Gov. College Station, Texas, they also declared their utility payments were hit, although my sources did not say if it was Click2Gov or not, but it really smells like Click2Gov. Norman, Oklahoma as well. Online payment system to pay utility bills was hit. And basically between August 26th and August 28th, if you made an online payment for there or set up online payment, you might have been hit as well. Automatic payments set up before August 26th are not at risk. I do not know as well if that is Click2Gov. But again, another utility bill got hit, so that's my guess. Moving on, we're going to be talking about Pennsylvania, and I actually found this one rather interesting. Now, a prisoner said he faced an increased risk of identity theft because of a data breach that occurred while he was in prison of the Pennsylvania penal system, and he wanted to sue Pennsylvania to do that, and a federal district court in Pennsylvania basically said, yeah, you can go ahead and do that. So the inmate is Daryl Locke, and the judge, which was Robert D. Marinari of the U.S. District Court for the Middle District of Pennsylvania, wrote that basically he has the right to sue, as anybody else does, prisoner or otherwise. So we're going to see where that goes, and I'll keep you updated on that. But I found that to be rather interesting because most people don't think of prisoners suing for identity theft when, quite frankly, their convictions are usually public record. Moving on, let's talk about Iran. This is actually probably one of the worst data breaches Iran has ever seen. Millions of Iranian bank cards were published online after anti-government protests this month. Now, experts in Iran think that it's a state-sponsored cyber attack. The details of 15 million bank debit cards in Iran has been published on social media in the aftermath of these protests. I didn't find much more on this, but if you are living in Iran, you might have had your bank card exposed online by probably state-sponsored hackers. Moving on, we're going to be talking about TransUnion Hong Kong. TransUnion, obviously, is a credit reporting bureau that is worldwide. They're one of the big three. They suspended their online services after a local newspaper in Hong Kong reported that it was able to access personal data of the city's leader and finance minister. Now, TransUnion holds customer information on about 500 million people in more than 30 countries, and the China-based newspaper Ming Pao claimed that it was able to obtain credit reports for a number of high-profile public figures due to TransUnion's basically lack of complex authentication procedures. And so they looked at the banking regulator, the monetary authority, the Hong Kong Association of Banks, and all of that. They basically have come together and said that TransUnion needs to immediately suspend their online credit reporting services in Hong Kong, and that's what they did. Hopefully, it is not going to be as easy for the other 499 million of us in 29 other countries that may be hit, but heads up, we might be looking at another Equifax-style data breach coming out of TransUnion sooner than later. And finally, we are going to be talking about Italy. Now, we may actually have another Cambridge Analytica Facebook breach situation going on our hands coming out of Italy. Now, here's what's going on. Last week, an Italian online newspaper, Linkesta.it, reported that Casaleggio Associati, which apparently is a digital marketing firm owned and operated by the Five Star Movement, that's the son of the Five Star Movement's founder, may have illegally accessed the personal data of millions of Facebook users without their consent. According to this report, an online app released in 2013 for Five Star Party activists basically allowed this digital marketing company to access the personal data of activists as well as their Facebook friends. Casaleggio Associati still owns the Five Stars digital democracy platform Rousseau and oversees the party's political positions. So basically, similar to Cambridge Analytica in the way that Senator Ted Cruz and Steve Bannon were able to data mine Facebook users when the Facebook users downloaded an app and interacted with it, this actually is the same thing. Five Stars had an app for their digital marketing that people would download and interact with. And because there's a lack of control on Facebook's backend, that basically allowed this group, the Five Star Movement, or rather their digital wing of that, to start data mining and scraping millions of users, presumably Italians living in Italy, that would have something to do with their election. But we are going to see this over and over and over because Facebook lacks these very serious controls. And while I think it's a major story that even earlier this week, 29,000 Facebook employees just lost their data because somebody shouldn't have had an unencrypted hard drive with data on it to begin with, given the size of that company and their car. But now we're starting to see other things come to light. As we start looking back historically, we have found data from Facebook everywhere in third parties, usually exposed through Amazon Web Services or other cloud hosting platforms. Obviously not Amazon's fault. There's just developers are not locking these things down. But that is a very serious issue, and it continues to snowball. So I'm not obviously going to let this go. And if you've been watching me, you know my disdain, I think, in some ways for Facebook in this sense, for lack of privacy, security, and everything else. And so I'll add this to my list. But those are your breaches of the week. Were you affected? Let me know. And please like, share, follow me here on Facebook and Twitter. And also please feel free to subscribe to me at YouTube as well. And as always, stay safe and stay online. Thanks, guys.